Hi everyone, we are in the Dreamforce Museum in Bangkok. So the museum is reopening today after a 2-month closure owing to the coronavirus pandemic. So we decided to take our readers on a tour. This year's exhibit, which actually began in May, draws comparisons between the crackdown on the 1989 student-led movement in Beijing and the citywide protests in Hong Kong over the past year. So as you can see, here is a timeline documenting some of the key events in both movements. The reopening of the Dreamforce Museum coincided with the court case that involved some of the organizers of the Dreamforce Vigil. So more than 20 pro-democracy figures, including those from the Hong Kong Alliance, which is the organizer for the annual Dreamforce Vigil at the Victoria Park, will appear in court later after they were arrested and charged in connection to the commemoration that took place in June. Police banned the Dreamforce candlelight vigil for the first time this year, citing coronavirus fears. Despite the ban, thousands of people gathered in Victoria Park and around and across Hong Kong to remember the military crackdown on the movement, which led to hundreds or perhaps thousands of deaths in Beijing. So here we are looking at a map that documents the location where people died during the Dreamforce incident. Next to it is also a map that shows the locations of where tear gas and other crowd control gear were deployed by police during the anti-extradition bill movement. This is a press vest that was burned. And here, this is a very interesting tool that some protesters used to cover the tear gas canister. And here are some of the other tools that were used by demonstrators during the movement. These illustrations combines the participants of the two movements. For example, here you can see a human chain that featured what appeared to be secondary students in Hong Kong and also those that studied in Beijing back in 1989. The museum also have a lot of items that were from Beijing 31 years ago, including this t-shirt that says Peking University and with the signature of many students. Here we can take a look at the publicity materials that were used in during Dreamforce, and on this side we see very familiar posters that were put up across Hong Kong, say on Lennon walls and stuff. So back then they also prepared like keychains, stickers, badges. This one here, it says freedom and democracy, it's what everyone in China wants. We also see some publications prepared by different groups, including universities. There is also a mini Lenin wall, which is a type of message board that Hong Kong protesters have used over the past year to show support for the movement. The museum also recreated some of the banners that appeared in the Dreamforce movement, and the museum staff just pointed out how different it is between those that are used nowadays. So instead of drawing on words with paint, now we print now people print slogans and make banners like this. Here are some iconic cartoon characters called Pepe or Pipi. It appeared in a lot of rallies, demonstrations, and protests, and one of the most memorable scene was when people put on these type of masks during a protest against the anti-mask law, which was enacted back in October last year. This board also draws comparison between the development of two movements and some of the features and how the two movements are different. For example, here they looked at how students in Beijing occupied the Tiananmen Square, but now over the past year, protesters in Hong Kong have always advocated the idea of be water, which means they would move around very quickly, and instead of occupying one particular spot. Here it also discussed the characteristics of leadership in the two movements. So back then in Beijing, there were a few student leaders who were the core of the movement, but during the anti-extradition bill protests, people always talked about not having a big stage or decentralization, as in they didn't want a particular leader or a particular group to lead the movement. And here they look at how both movements strive to take their demands to the global stage. Just now, one of the museum staff said it's very interesting to look at how people kept they kept pushing for international advocacy, but now under the Beijing imposed national security law, this act of lobbying might be deemed as illegal under the law, as those involved could be seen as colluding with foreign forces, and as one of the highest profile arrests linked to that offense would be pro-democracy media tycoon Jimmy Lai, who was arrested last month under that alleged offense. Here it shows different people involved in the two movements. We have district councillors, elderly, journalists. And lastly, they reflect on whether what they've seen as totalitarian rulers would evolve, and some of the means that they believe the authority would use to suppress pro-democracy movements. So in June, the museum actually launched a crowdfunding plan to build a virtual museum, hoping that they can retain the materials linked to the crackdown on the 1989 movement, and it actually, like, the crowdfunding campaign was a success, and they were able to receive enough funding to launch that project. But they also told me that they also told Hong Kong Free Press that the actual museum here, located in Mong Kok, the operation cost and everything, they still need to rely on donations to keep it running. But this is a wrap of our tour of the museum today. It is, again, it has reopened today after 2 months of closure. If you're interested, you can pop by and take a look at the museum yourself. So thank you for watching, and please continue to support us on social media, and thanks for watching.